curtains, with the lamplight shining through them, swaying softly to and fro in the warm night wind. There was a sort of excitement in the idea of seeing Madame Münster again. He became aware that his heart was beating rather faster than usual. It was this that made him stop, with a half-amused surprise. But in a moment he went along the piazza, and, approaching the open window, tapped upon its lintel with his stick. He could see the Baroness within. She was standing in the middle of the room. She came to the window and pulled aside the curtain. Then she stood looking at him a moment. She was not smiling. She seemed serious. "Mais entrez donc," she said at last. Acton passed in across the window-sill. He wondered for an instant what was the matter with her. But the next moment she had begun to smile and had put out her hand. "Better late than never," she said. "It is very kind of you to come at this hour." "I have just returned from my journey," said Acton. "Ah, very kind, very kind," she repeated, looking about her where to sit. "I went first to the other house," Acton continued. "I expected to find you there." She had sunk into her usual chair, but she got up again and began to move about the room. Acton had laid down his hat and stick. He was looking at her, conscious that there was in fact a great charm in seeing her again. "I don't know whether I ought to tell you to sit down," she said. "It is too late to begin a visit." "It's too early to end one," Acton declared. "And we needn't mind the beginning." She looked at him again, and after a moment dropped once more into her low chair, while he took a place near her. "We are in the middle, then?" she asked. "Was that where we were when you went away?" "No, I haven't been to the other house." "Not yesterday nor the day before, eh?" "I don't know how many days it is." "You are tired of it," said Acton. She leaned back in her chair; her arms were folded. "That is a terrible accusation, but I have not the courage to defend myself." "I am not attacking you," said Acton. "I expected something of this kind." "It's a proof of extreme intelligence. I hope you enjoyed your journey." "Not at all," Acton declared. "I would much rather have been here with you." "Now you are attacking me," said the Baroness. "You are contrasting my inconstancy with your own fidelity." "I confess I never get tired of people I like." "Ah, you are not a poor, wicked foreign woman, with irritable nerves and a sophisticated mind." "Something has happened to you since I went away," said Acton, changing his place. "Your going away. That is what has happened to me." "Do you mean to say that you have missed me?" he asked. "If I had meant to say it, it would not be worth your making a note of. I am very dishonest, and my compliments are worthless." Acton was silent for some moments. "You have broken down," he said at last. Madame Münster left her chair and began to move about. "Only for a moment. I shall pull myself together again." "You had better not take it too hard. If you are bored, you needn't be afraid to say so—to me, at least." "You shouldn't say such things as that," the Baroness answered. "You should encourage me." "I admire your patience. That is encouraging." "You shouldn't even say that. When you talk of my patience you are disloyal to your own people. Patience implies suffering, and what have I had to suffer?" "Oh, not hunger, not unkindness, certainly," said Acton, laughing. "Nevertheless, we all admire your patience." "You all detest me!" cried the Baroness, with a sudden vehemence, turning her back toward him. "You make it hard," said Acton, getting up, "for a man to say something tender to you." This evening there was something particularly striking and touching about her, an unwonted softness and a look of suppressed emotion. He felt himself suddenly appreciating the fact that she had behaved very well. She had come to this quiet corner of the world under the weight of a cruel indignity, and she had been so gracefully, modestly thankful for the rest she found there. She had joined that simple circle over the way. She had mingled in its plain provincial talk. She had shared its meagre and savourless pleasures. She had set herself a task, and she had rigidly performed it. She had conformed to the angular conditions of New England life, and she had had the tact and pluck to carry it off as if she liked them. Acton felt a more downright need than he had ever felt before to tell her that he admired her and that she struck him as a very superior woman. All along, hitherto, he had been on his guard with her. He had been cautious, observant, suspicious. But now a certain light tumult in his blood seemed to tell him that a finer degree of confidence in this charming woman would be its own reward. "We don't detest you," he went on. "I don't know what you mean. At any rate, I speak for myself. I don't know anything about the others. Very likely you detest them for the dull life they make you lead. Really, it would give me a sort of pleasure to hear you say so." Eugenia had been looking at the door on the other side of the room. Now she slowly turned her eyes toward Robert Acton. "What can be the motive," she asked, "of a man like you, an honest man, a galant homme, in saying so base a thing as that?" "Does it sound very base?" asked Acton candidly. "I suppose it does, and I thank you for telling me so. Of course I don't mean it literally." The Baroness stood looking at him. "How do you mean it?" she asked. This question was difficult to answer, and Acton, feeling the least bit foolish, walked to the open window and looked out. He stood there thinking a moment, and then he turned back. "You know that document that you were to send to Germany," he said. "You called it your renunciation. Did you ever send it?" Madame Münster's eyes expanded. She looked very grave. "What a singular answer to my question!" "Oh, it isn't an answer," said Acton. "I have wished to ask you many times. I thought it probable you would tell me yourself. The question, on my part, seems abrupt now. But it would be abrupt at any time." The Baroness was silent a moment, and then, "I think I have told you too much," she said. This declaration appeared to Acton to have a certain force. He had, indeed, a sense of asking more of her than he offered her. He returned to the window and watched, for a moment, a little star that twinkled through the lattice of the piazza. There were, at any rate, offers enough he could make. Perhaps he had hitherto not been sufficiently explicit in doing so. "I wish you would ask something of me," he presently said. "Is there nothing I can do for you? If you can't stand this dull life any more, let me amuse you." The Baroness had sunk once more into a chair, and she had taken up a fan which she held with both hands to her mouth. Over the top of the fan her eyes were fixed on him. "You are very strange tonight," she said, with a little laugh. "I will do anything in the world," he rejoined, standing in front of her. "Shouldn't you like to travel about and see something of the country? Won't you go to Niagara? You ought to see Niagara, you know." "With you, do you mean?" "I should be delighted to take you." "You alone?" Acton looked at her smiling, and yet with a serious air. "Well, yes, we might go alone," he said. "If you were not what you are," she answered, "I should feel insulted." "How do you mean, what I am?" "If you were one of the gentlemen I have been used to all my life. If you were not a queer Bostonian." "If the gentlemen you have been used to have taught you to expect insults," said Acton, "I am glad I am what I am. You had much better come to Niagara." "If you wish to amuse me," the Baroness declared, "you need go to no further expense. You amuse me very effectually." He sat down opposite to her. She still held her fan up to her face, with her eyes only showing above it. There was a moment's silence, and then he said, returning to his former question, "Have you sent that document to Germany?" Again there was a moment's silence. The expressive eyes of Madame Münster seemed, however, half to break it.